The galaxy never truly sleeps. Signals bounce between stars every second, carrying voices, data, and dreams across impossible distances. In the Outer Rim monitoring station, Ryler watched streams of light flow across his screens like rivers of information. His four hands moved between different consoles with practiced ease, checking frequencies and monitoring the usual chatter that filled the void between worlds. Earth's channel always ran the brightest. Humans talked constantly, sharing everything from scientific discoveries to cooking recipes. They broadcasted more in a single day than most species managed in a month. Ryler had grown accustomed to their endless noise. It was comforting in a strange way, like background music that reminded him the universe was alive and busy. Then the music stopped. At first, Ryler thought his equipment had malfunctioned. He tapped the screen with one hand while the other three pulled up diagnostic programs. Everything showed green. The systems worked perfectly, but Earth's signal had vanished completely, not weakened or distorted, simply gone. His large eyes widened as he expanded the view to show all human frequencies. Radio waves, data streams, entertainment broadcasts, even the automated weather satellites that humans loved so much. All silent. Every single channel that originated from Earth now displayed flat lines across his monitors. Ryler felt his twin hearts begin to race. In 15 years of monitoring galactic communications, he had never seen anything like this. He reached for the emergency channel with his upper right hand, while his lower left hand was already composing an alert message. Within minutes, other monitoring stations across the galaxy confirmed the same thing. Earth had gone completely dark. No transmissions, no responses to hails, nothing. The third planet in the Sol system had simply stopped talking to the rest of the universe. The Galactic Council called an emergency session within the hour. Ryler teleported to the Great Chamber, his diplomatic robes hastily thrown over his monitoring station uniform. He had never seen the council floor so chaotic. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the curved rows of seats, all talking at once, their voices creating a wall of confused noise. Ryler made his way to the central platform, his credentials granting him immediate speaking rights. The lights focused on him as the crowd slowly quieted. "Earth has been silent for 6 hours and 42 minutes, he announced, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "All communication channels are dead. All automated systems have ceased transmission. This includes defense satellites, scientific probes, and civilian broadcasts." A heavy silence fell across the chamber. Then everyone started shouting questions at once. Ryler raised all four hands for silence. "We sent 2 automated reconnaissance probes. The first disappeared when it reached Earth's outer satellite network. The second managed to send back one transmission before it also went silent." He gestured to the large holographic display above the platform. An image appeared, showing Earth from orbit. The planet looked normal. Cloud patterns swirled across blue oceans. Green and brown continents sat beneath white ice caps. City lights glowed across the dark side of the world, visible even from space. "As you can see, the planet appears undamaged. Power grids are active, cities are lit, but we detected no movement. No vehicles, no aircraft, no signs of activity, just lights burning in an empty world." A merchant captain named Dila stood from her seat in the commercial section. Her fur bristled with obvious distress. "What about humans off-world? My crew has 3 humans. They were fine this morning." Before Ryler could answer, another voice called out, "Our human engineers are at their posts right now. They seem normal." "Our medical stations report the same. Human staff are working as usual." Ryler felt a small wave of relief, but it died quickly. If off-world humans were fine, then something specific to Earth had happened, something that affected only the homeworld. The council dissolved into arguments. Some species wanted to send military vessels immediately. Others warned about unknown threats. A few suggested quarantine protocols. In the chaos, Ryler noticed something that made his blood run cold. He pulled up resource allocation charts on his personal display, trade routes, supply chains, maintenance schedules. The data painted a picture he had never fully appreciated before. Humans were everywhere, not just visitors or occasional workers. They had woven themselves into the fabric of galactic civilization so completely that their presence had become invisible through familiarity. 40% of interstellar cargo routes relied on human logistics coordinators. Medical stations across 3 sectors depended on human doctors and researchers. The largest entertainment networks distributed content produced primarily by human creators. Even the Calrith homeworld's defense grid, one of the most advanced in the galaxy, had been designed by human engineers. Ryler stood frozen, staring at the data. Humans had arrived in the galactic community less than a century ago, newcomers by any measure. Most species had dismissed them as enthusiastic primitives, helpful but not essential. Yet somehow, in that brief time, they had become the glue holding everything together. And now they were gone. A cold realization washed over him. The galaxy had not just lost a member species. It had lost its connective tissue. Without Earth, without humanity's constant work behind the scenes, everything would start falling apart. He looked up at the image of Earth still rotating slowly in the holographic display. Lights burning bright, cities standing intact, but empty of the voices that had filled the galaxy with their endless chatter and tireless help. Ryler's hands trembled as he activated the emergency protocols. Whatever had happened to Earth, they needed answers fast. The galaxy had 6 hours, maybe less, before critical systems started failing, before people started dying because human doctors were not there to save them, before ships were stranded because human coordinators were not managing the routes. The council chamber erupted in fresh arguments, but Ryler was already moving. He had a science team to assemble and a silent planet to investigate. Time was running out, and for the first time in his long career, Ryler truly understood what humans had been to the galaxy. Everything. Deela's cargo ship hung dead in space, stranded halfway between jump points like a leaf caught in an invisible web. Warning lights painted her bridge in shades of amber and red. Her thick fingers danced across controls that refused to respond properly. Come on," she growled, her fur standing on end with frustration. The jump gate network should have activated 10 minutes ago. Instead, her navigation computer kept showing error messages in languages she barely recognized. Her communications officer, a thin crystalline being named Trell, looked up from his station with worry glowing in his transparent face. Captain, I am receiving similar reports from 47 other vessels. The relay stations are not coordinating properly. Deela slumped in her command chair, which creaked under her bulk. Let me guess. The relay stations run on human-designed systems. Correct. The coordination algorithms were implemented by human technicians across the entire network. Without active management, the gates are defaulting to safety protocols and shutting down. Deela closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her cargo hold contained medical supplies bound for a colony world. Time-sensitive vaccines that needed to reach their destination within 48 hours. Without the jump network, she would never make it in time. People would die. She was not alone in her predicament. Across the galaxy, the consequences of Earth's silence rippled outward like cracks in glass. On Medical Station Helix 7, Dr. Vanta watched her patient with growing dread. The small child, a Barwin with pale green skin, struggled to breathe despite the oxygen mask covering her small face. The disease ravaging her body was rare but treatable. Vanta had treated 2 cases just last month using a human-developed serum. But the serum required precise temperature control during synthesis, maintained by equipment calibrated to human specifications. The lead human researcher, who had configured the medical fabricators, now sat motionless in the corner of the lab. Her eyes were open but seeing nothing. Her hands rested on her lap, still and useless. Vanta had tried everything to wake her. Medical scans showed normal brain activity, normal vital signs. The human was healthy in every measurable way, yet she remained locked in some kind of waking coma. Unreachable and unresponsive. Without her expertise, Vanta could not properly calibrate the fabricator. The machine produced the serum, but the chemical composition was slightly off, unusable, dangerous even. The Barwin child coughed, a wet rattling sound that made Vanta's bioluminescent markings pulse with distress. She had perhaps 6 hours to find a solution, maybe less. Meanwhile, on the Calrith homeworld, Defense Coordinator Thren watched his planet's protective shield flicker like a dying light. The massive energy barrier that had protected his people for 3 generations showed gaps in its coverage. Small at first, but growing larger with each passing minute. His team worked frantically to compensate, rerouting power and adjusting field generators. But the defense grid was incredibly complex, a masterpiece of integrated systems that required constant fine-tuning. The humans who had designed it understood the delicate balance between thousands of components. They had trained Calrith technicians, but there was so much knowledge they had not yet transferred. Thren pulled up the human designer's notes, trying to make sense of the equations and schematics. The math was elegant, brilliant even, but without the humans to explain the reasoning behind certain choices, he was lost. Each fix he attempted created 2 new problems elsewhere in the grid. Above his planet, the shield continued to fail. If hostile forces noticed the weakness, if anyone decided to attack while Calrith was vulnerable, millions would die. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ryler compiled reports from across known space. The numbers were staggering. Entertainment networks had gone dark, leaving billions without their daily programs. Translation services were failing as human linguists who bridged communication gaps between incompatible species remained catatonic. Research projects ground to a halt. Trade agreements hung in limbo without human mediators to navigate the cultural differences between species. A pattern emerged from the chaos. Humans had not just participated in galactic society. They had positioned themselves at every critical junction, every point where different systems and species needed to interact. It was as if they had instinctively known where connections were needed and had moved to fill those gaps. Ryler thought back to first contact, nearly a century ago. Humans had arrived in crude ships, broadcasting greetings in 100 different alien languages they had painstakingly learned from intercepted transmissions. They had been so eager, so desperate to connect and communicate. The galaxy had found them charming, primitive but enthusiastic, useful for simple tasks, good at explaining things to others because they remembered what it was like to not understand. No one had realized that humans were not just helping. They were weaving themselves into the foundation of everything, making themselves essential not through force or demands, but through 1,000 small acts of service and connection. Now those connections were breaking, and the galaxy was collapsing with them. A message came through on Ryler's private channel. One of the research vessels had reached Earth's moon and was preparing to send a landing team to the planet's surface. Ryler authorized the mission with 3 of his hands while his 4th hand pulled up casualty estimates. The numbers made him sick. If Earth's silence continued for another day, thousands would die from medical emergencies. Within a week, food distribution would collapse in dozens of systems. Within a month, conflicts would break out as species unable to communicate fell back on old prejudices and misunderstandings. Ryler looked at the holographic image of Earth still rotating slowly in the center of the chamber. Such a small world, so young in galactic terms, yet its people had accomplished something no other species had managed. They had made themselves irreplaceable not through superior technology or military might, but through the simple act of caring about everyone else's problems. The galaxy had taken that gift for granted, had barely noticed the humans working quietly in the background, keeping everything running smoothly. Now, their absence screamed louder than their presence ever had. Ryler sent a priority message to the research vessel. Find out what happened. Find out how to fix it. Find out before the galaxy tears itself apart. The response came back quickly. Landing team deploying in 30 minutes. Ryler settled in to wait, knowing that whatever they found on Earth's surface would determine the fate of billions across the stars. The research vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere without interference. No defense systems activated. No challenges came over communication channels. The planet accepted their approach like a door left wide open, trusting and unguarded. Vanta led the landing team, her tentacles gripping the safety harness as their shuttle broke through the clouds. Below, a city sprawled across the landscape, its buildings reaching toward the sky like crystalline fingers. Streets formed geometric patterns between structures. Everything looked perfectly normal from altitude. Then they got closer. Vanta's bioluminescent markings flickered with shock as the true picture became clear. The streets were full of vehicles, but none of them moved. Traffic lights cycled through their colors, commanding an audience that could not respond. On sidewalks, humans stood or sat or lay exactly where they had been when the silence fell. The shuttle landed in a public park. Through the viewing port, Vanta saw a human male frozen mid-stride, one foot raised, forever caught in a step he would never complete. A female sat on a bench nearby, a book open in her lap, eyes staring at a page she was no longer reading. Children dotted the playground equipment, suspended in the act of playing, still and quiet as statues. "Seal your suits," Vanta ordered, though her instruments showed the air was perfectly safe. Some instinct told her that protection might matter, even if not for the reasons they expected. The landing team emerged cautiously. Vanta approached the male human first, pulling out her medical scanner. The device hummed as it analyzed his body, heart beating steadily, lungs drawing breath, blood flowing normally, brain activity present and within expected parameters. But when Vanta looked into his eyes, she saw nothing. No awareness, no recognition, no response to her presence. He simply stared forward at something only he could see. "They are alive," Vanta reported to her team. "Fully functional in every biological sense, but not here, not present." One of her team members, a young researcher named Pip, stood near the woman on the bench. Pip's large ears drooped with sadness. "Where did they go? Where are they?" Vanta had no answer. She moved through the park, scanning human after human. All showed the same pattern. Bodies maintained by automatic biological processes, minds absent. The team spread out across the city, documenting what they found. Humans in their homes preparing meals that would never be eaten. Humans in offices, hands frozen over keyboards. Humans in hospitals, both as patients and as doctors standing over them. The entire population locked in a single moment, unable to move forward or back. In what appeared to be a residential area, Vanta found a family. Father, mother, 2 children. They sat around a table, food still steaming on plates before them. The parents' hands reached toward each other across the table, fingers almost touching but not quite. The children looked toward their parents, mouths open as if about to speak. Vanta felt something twist in her chest. This was not death. Death at least had finality. This was something worse. An existence trapped between living and ceasing, aware but unable to act. "Commander Vanta, you need to see this." Pip's voice came through the communication link, tight with urgency. Vanta found the young researcher at a monitoring station the team had set up near the shuttle. Pip pointed at a display showing energy readings from beneath the city. "There is something down there, deep underground, generating massive amounts of energy." Vanta studied the readings. The energy signature was unlike anything in her database. It pulsed with regular rhythm, strong enough to be detected from the surface. Can you pinpoint the source? Pip's fingers danced across the controls. It appears to be coming from beneath the ocean floor, approximately 4,000 kilometers from our current position. Vanta made a decision quickly. Recall the team. We are relocating to those coordinates. The journey took them over water that stretched to the horizon. The ocean's surface reflected sunlight in brilliant patterns, beautiful and uncaring. Beneath those waves, something ancient was calling. They deployed a deep-sea exploration pod, a small submarine designed for scientific research. Vanta insisted on piloting it herself, taking Pip as her only companion. The others would monitor from the surface. Down they went, through layers of water that grew darker and colder. Fish swam past their viewing ports, unaffected by whatever had frozen humanity in place. Life continued here, indifferent to the catastrophe above. At 4,000 meters depth, their lights caught something that should not exist. A structure rose from the ocean floor, massive and geometric. The material was dark, almost black, covered in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Symbols glowed along its surface in colors that hurt to look at. "That is not human technology," Pip whispered, pressing against the viewing port. "No," Vanta agreed. "This predates humanity by millions of years, perhaps billions." As they circled the structure, their instruments went wild. Energy readings spiked beyond measurable limits. The structure was active, doing something with that energy, broadcasting it, focusing it. Vanta noticed something else. The energy signature matched exactly with the brain pattern she had recorded from the catatonic humans. This thing was connected to them somehow, linked to every human on Earth and perhaps beyond. She moved the submarine closer, trying to find an entrance or access point. The symbols on the structure's surface brightened as they approached, responding to their presence. "Commander, I am detecting human neural patterns," Pip said, adjusting their scanning equipment. "The structure is transmitting them. Billions of individual consciousness patterns, all synchronized together." Vanta felt cold realization wash over her. The humans were not absent. They were here, inside this ancient structure, or connected to it. Every mind on Earth linked together, focused on a single purpose she could not yet understand. "We need to establish communication," Vanta said. "If the humans are in there, we need to find out why, and we need to know if they can come back." Pip nodded, already configuring their equipment for an attempt at contact. As they worked, Vanta stared at the structure and wondered what could possibly require the collective consciousness of an entire species. And what would happen to the galaxy if humanity never woke up? Establishing communication with the structure took 3 days. 3 days while the galaxy continued to fall apart. Dila's cargo ship remained stranded. She had rationed power down to minimal life support, sitting in the dark and cold, waiting for a rescue that might never come. The medical supplies in her hold had already expired. Somewhere, colonists who needed those vaccines were dying. On Medical Station Helix 7, Dr. Vanta's patient had passed away. The small Barwin child had fought bravely, but without the proper treatment, her body had simply given up. She was the first casualty. She would not be the last. 6 more patients in critical condition waited for human-developed treatments that were no longer available. The Calrith homeworld's shields had failed completely. The planet sat defenseless for the first time in generations. Thren had evacuated the capital city as a precaution, moving millions underground. His people lived in fear, waiting for an attack that fortune alone prevented. And in her submarine beneath Earth's ocean, researcher Vanta had finally created a bridge between alien technology and human consciousness. The device was crude, built from spare parts and held together by desperation. But when Vanta activated it, the world changed. Her mind suddenly expanded, touching something vast and terrible and heartbreakingly human. She saw through billions of eyes, felt through billions of hearts. The collective consciousness of humanity flowed around her like an ocean, and she was a single drop of water trying to maintain its shape. "Commander," Pip's voice sounded distant, filtered through layers of reality. "Your vital signs are spiking. Should I disconnect you?" "No," Vanta managed to say. "I am fine. I am seeing what they see." And what she saw made her want to weep. The humans were not trapped. They were fighting. Every single one of them engaged in a desperate battle against something that defied description. An entity, ancient and hungry, pressed against a barrier that the humans held together through sheer force of will. The entity had no true form. It existed as pure malevolence, a darkness that consumed thought itself. It fed on consciousness, devouring the minds of sentient beings the way fire consumes fuel, and it was trying to break free from its prison. Vanta understood now. The structure beneath the ocean was not built by humans. It was far older than their species. It was a prison, created by an ancient civilization to contain this horror. That civilization was long dead, consumed by the very thing they had tried to lock away. But they had left a key, a genetic trigger buried in the descendants they had seeded across multiple worlds before their fall. Humans carried that trigger in their very cells, passed down through countless generations from ancestors they had never known existed. When the prison's containment began to fail, damaged by galactic expansion and the vibrations of so much activity in nearby space, the trigger activated. Every human felt it simultaneously, an irresistible call pulling them toward their true purpose. They were the descendants of jailers, and the prisoner was trying to escape. So humanity dropped everything and rushed to hold the door shut. Vanta felt the strain they were under. Billions of minds working as one, forming a living seal over the cracks in the ancient prison. They had been holding it for days now, exhausted beyond measure, but unable to stop. If they let go for even a moment, the entity would break through. And then it would feed. Vanta saw what would happen if they failed. The entity would consume every conscious mind in the galaxy, not kill them. Worse, it would eat their thoughts, their memories, their very sense of self, leaving behind empty bodies that still lived but no longer contained anything that could be called a person. The galaxy would become a museum of the living dead. Humanity stood between civilization and that fate. They had not chosen this burden. It had been thrust upon them by ancestors who died before Earth's sun was born. But when the call came, they answered without hesitation. Vanta pulled back from the connection, her tentacles trembling. She looked at Pip through the viewing port, seeing the young researcher's concerned expression. "They are protecting us," Vanta said quietly. "All of us, the entire galaxy. They have been holding back something terrible since the moment they fell silent. Can they hold it forever?" "No," Vanta's bioluminescent markings pulsed with distress. "They are fatting, I could feel it. The strain is too much for one species to bear alone. They will exhaust themselves eventually, and when they do, we all die." Pip's ears drooped. "Then what do we do?" Vanta looked at the ancient structure through the submarine's window. The symbols carved into its surface seemed to pulse with meaning she almost understood. The entity inside pressed against its prison, patient and eternal, waiting for the moment when the human barrier would finally crack. "We help them," Vanta said. "We share the burden." "But how? We are not human. We do not carry their genetic trigger." "No, but we carry something else. Consciousness, sentience, will." Vanta turned to Pip, her decision made. "The humans are using their minds to reinforce the prison. There is no reason other minds cannot do the same. We simply need to link our consciousness to theirs." "That sounds dangerous." "It is." Vanta did not lie. "We will be exposing ourselves to the same entity that wants to consume us. We will feel what the humans feel, know what they know, face the same horror they have been facing alone." Pip was quiet for a long moment. Then the young researcher straightened, ears perked forward with determination. Then we had better start working. We will need to modify the communication device to allow multiple connections, and we will need to convince the Galactic Council to ask for volunteers. Vanta felt pride warm her chest. You understand what this means. We are asking people to risk their minds, their very selves. Yes, Pip said simply, but the humans did not hesitate when the call came. How can we do less for them? They have been protecting us all this time. Now it is our turn to protect them. Vanta began working on the modifications immediately, her tentacles flying across the equipment. They had days at most before humanity's strength failed. Days to convince the galaxy to do something terrifying. Days to prove that other species could be as brave as the human who had given everything to save them. Ryler stood before the Galactic Council for the second time in a week, but this time he was not reporting a mystery. He was asking for volunteers to face their worst nightmare. The humans are protecting us from an entity that feeds on consciousness, he explained, all four of his hands gesturing at the holographic display showing the prison beneath Earth's ocean. They cannot hold it alone much longer. We need others to join the mental barrier, to link their minds with humanity's and share the burden. Silence filled the great chamber. Then the arguments began. You are asking us to risk insanity, a Chlorian representative declared, his crystalline body vibrating with agitation, to expose our minds to something that devours thought itself. We should evacuate the galaxy, another voice called out, find new space far from this threat. And leave the humans to die, Dila's voice boomed from the merchant section. She had finally been rescued from her stranded ship, arrived at the council just hours before. After everything they have done for us. The humans chose their fate, someone else argued. We did not ask them to be guardians. They did not choose anything. Ryler's voice rose, his careful diplomatic composure cracking. This burden was thrust upon them by their ancestors. They could have run. They could have fled Earth and let the entity break free. Instead, they stayed and fought to protect species who barely even noticed their existence. He pulled up casualty reports, letting the numbers speak for themselves. 47 deaths so far from medical emergencies, hundreds stranded in space, defense grids failing across 6 sectors, all because humans were too busy saving the galaxy to do their jobs, and you want to abandon them. Dr. Vanta's image appeared on the holographic display transmitted from her submarine. I have touched the human consciousness, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I felt what they feel. The entity is real. It is hungry. And if we do nothing, humanity will fall. When they do, the entity will be free. It will consume every thinking being in the galaxy within weeks, maybe days. You ask us to trust your experience, a council member challenged. One person's testimony is not enough to risk thousands of volunteers. Then let me testify as well. A new voice joined the transmission. The screen split to show a human face. A woman, her eyes tired but aware. Behind her, other humans moved slowly, carefully, as if walking through water. Ryler's heart skipped a beat. You are awake. Barely, the human woman said. My name is Patricia Cole. I am a doctor stationed on Ganymede. When the call came, I was 300 million kilometers from Earth. The distance weakened the pull. Some of us on the outer colonies managed to partially resist. We have been fighting to stay conscious ever since. Patricia's face showed the strain she was under. Imagine feeling yourself being pulled apart, your mind trying to be in 2 places at once. That is what we experience every moment. Those of us who can still function are barely managing, but we stay aware so we can tell you what is happening. She took a shaky breath. The entity is older than stars. It has consumed entire civilizations. The species that built the prison were the last survivors of a galaxy it had already devoured. They sacrificed themselves to trap it, to give other galaxies a chance. They seeded their descendants across multiple worlds as backup keepers. Humans are just one of those bloodlines. Are there others? Ryler asked. 3 other species in distant galaxies, all serving the same function, all descended from the same source. Patricia's image flickered. But we are the ones closest to this prison. We are the front line, and we are failing. The council chamber erupted in fresh debate. Ryler listened to the arguments swirl around him, hearing the fear in every voice. They were being asked to face something incomprehensible, to risk their very minds. Then Dila stood. I will go first. The chamber fell silent. I will link my mind to the humans, Dila continued. I have flown with human crews, eaten at their tables. They trusted me with their lives many times. I can do no less for them. Pip's voice came through the transmission. I volunteer as well. I have already touched the connection briefly. I know what waits, but I also know what the humans are enduring. They need us. One by one, others began to stand. A Calrith technician who had worked alongside human engineers, a medical researcher who had learned from human doctors, a young student who had been taught by human teachers. They came from dozens of species, hundreds of worlds. Not everyone volunteered. Fear held many back, and Ryler did not blame them. What they were being asked to do terrified him too, but enough stepped forward, enough to make a difference. Within hours, Vanta had modified her device and transmitted the specifications to stations across the galaxy. The technology was not complicated. The hard part was what came after activation. Dila was the first non-human to link in. She sat in a medical bay, surrounded by monitoring equipment and nervous doctors. When the device activated, her entire body went rigid. She saw the entity, felt its hunger, understood the magnitude of what humanity had been facing alone. Then she felt something else. Billions of human minds reaching out to her, welcoming her, showing her how to add her strength to theirs. They did not judge her fear. They understood. They had been terrified too. Dila added her will to the barrier. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with her bare hands. The entity pressed against her mind, seeking weakness, looking for a crack it could exploit. But the humans were there, their presence surrounding her, supporting her. She was not alone. One by one, volunteers across the galaxy linked in. Each one felt the terror of facing the entity. Each one was welcomed by humanity and shown how to stand firm. The barrier grew stronger with each new mind added to it. Ryler watched the readings from the prison. The entity's attempts to break through were slowing. Not stopped, but contained more securely than before. The humans on Earth began to stir, some regaining partial consciousness as the burden was shared. It was working. The galaxy was learning to stand together, learning what humans had tried to teach them all along. That together, they could face anything. 3 months after the silence began, Ryler stood on Earth's surface for the first time. The transport had brought him to a small park in what humans called Colorado. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks white with snow. The air smelled clean and fresh, so different from the recycled atmosphere of space stations. Human children played on the swings and slides, their laughter carrying on the wind. Parents watched from benches, some human, some alien. A Chlorian family shared a picnic blanket with humans. A group of Calrith teenagers kicked a ball back and forth with human friends. But something had changed. If Ryler focused, he could feel it. A connection that had not existed before. A gentle awareness of other minds linked together across vast distances. The barrier still held, but now it was maintained by billions of volunteers from hundreds of species. Humanity had woken up slowly over the past weeks. As more aliens joined the mental barrier, the burden had lightened enough for humans to reclaim their individual consciousness. But they remained connected to the network, always aware of the prison beneath the ocean and the entity it contained. Ambassador Ryler, Patricia Cole approached him, walking steadily now, her exhaustion finally fading. She had been one of the first humans to fully recover. Thank you for coming. Ryler bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. I wanted to see Earth with my own eyes, to understand what you were protecting. Patricia smiled. Come, I will show you something. She led him to a building on the park's edge. Inside, humans and aliens worked side by side at computer stations. Holographic displays showed the prison's status, the barrier's strength, the rotation schedule for volunteers. This is the monitoring center, Patricia explained. We coordinate the barrier maintenance from here. Every species has representatives. Every volunteer is tracked and supported. A young human man looked up from his station. We have a new group rotating in from the Velian sector. 43 volunteers ready to link in for their shift. Confirmed, an alien operator responded. Previous shift is disengaging smoothly. No fluctuations in barrier integrity. Ryler watched the coordination with amazement. The galaxy had transformed the desperate defense into an organized system. Species took turns maintaining the barrier, working in shifts so no one had to endure the entity's presence for too long. Humans remained as anchors, their genetic connection to the prison making them natural conduits, but they no longer carried the burden alone. It is remarkable, Ryler said. You have turned a crisis into cooperation. We had no choice, Patricia replied. But yes, something good has come from this. Species that barely spoke to each other before now share the most intimate connection possible. You cannot link minds with someone and remain strangers. She pointed to a display showing connection statistics. Representatives from 215 species have volunteered so far, thousands of individuals. They come from all walks of life. Merchants, scientists, artists, soldiers. They all felt the entity's hunger. They all chose to stand against it. Ryler noticed something in the data. The barrier is stronger than when humans held it alone, even accounting for the larger number of participants. Yes, Patricia's expression grew thoughtful. Vanta theorized that diversity makes the barrier more resilient. The entity evolved to consume consciousness of a single type. Our ancestors were one species, one way of thinking. But now the barrier is made of hundreds of different thought patterns, different ways of experiencing reality. The entity cannot adapt fast enough to break through. So we are not just helping humanity, Ryler said slowly. We are creating something the entity has never faced before, a unified defense of multiple species. Exactly. Patricia walked to a window overlooking the park. The entity has been imprisoned for billions of years. It has tested the barrier countless times, always finding weaknesses in single species defenses. But this is different. This is new. Outside, Ryler saw Dila sitting on a bench with human children climbing over her like she was playground equipment. Her deep laugh rumbled across the park. She had volunteered for barrier duty every week since that first terrifying connection. She said it gave her purpose. Pip was there too, teaching a group of mixed-species students about consciousness theory. The young researcher had become one of the leading experts on the barrier mechanics. She had written 3 papers on the subject and was considered for a prestigious academic position. All across the park, humans and aliens existed together in easy harmony. The crisis had forced them to trust each other with their very minds. That kind of trust could not be easily undone. What happens now? Ryler asked. Do we maintain the barrier forever? Patricia turned from the window. We are working on a permanent solution. Vanta believes we can use the combined consciousness to not just contain the entity but to fundamentally alter the prison structure. Make it unbreakable even without constant monitoring. But it will take time. Years, maybe decades. And the galaxy has agreed to this. The galaxy has no choice, but yes, most have embraced it, Patricia smiled. We share something now, a common purpose. Species that spent centuries in isolation are talking to each other, sharing knowledge, forming bonds. The barrier forced us together, but we are choosing to stay together. Ryler thought about the Galactic Council, how it had changed in just 3 months. Representatives who once barely acknowledged each other now worked closely on barrier coordination. Trade agreements were being rewritten, defense pacts formed, cultural exchanges established. Humanity's silence had revealed how interconnected the galaxy truly was. Their sacrifice had taught other species that cooperation was not weakness but strength. The humans were always connectors, Ryler said. Even before this crisis, you moved between species, building bridges, making connections. Was that instinct, some buried knowledge of your purpose? Patricia considered the question. Maybe. Our ancestors were survivors of a consumed galaxy. Perhaps they passed down more than just genetic triggers. Perhaps they gave us an instinct to connect, to build communities, to never let anyone stand alone, because they had stood alone and they had failed. She looked at Ryler with eyes that had seen things no being should see. But we learned from their failure. We did not try to face the entity alone. We asked for help, and the galaxy answered. Ryler felt his twin heart swell with an emotion he could not name. Pride, perhaps, hope, gratitude. The galaxy answered because humanity taught us how, he said quietly. You showed us that strength comes not from standing apart but from standing together. Patricia reached out and gently touched one of his 4 hands. Through that simple contact, Ryler felt the echo of the barrier, the connection that now bound billions of minds across the stars. Humanity had not fallen silent. They had taught the galaxy to speak as one voice. And that voice said, "Together we will endure."